name's Louisa. I have been a forensic psychologist for nearly 20 years. I studied behavioural science and then honours and masters in forensic psychology, and I've worked across several different, parts of the criminal justice system. Early part of my career was in adult services, predominantly in the public sector. So I worked in high security and medium security prisons, both men and women. I worked in a forensic mental health setting for a while on a secure ward in a psychiatric hospital. I spent a bit of time working in Canada in a non-forensic setting, but with some forensic clients in a community health organisation with people who were homeless predominantly. And then I've spent a good chunk of time, over a decade, working in youth justice as the principal psychologist there. Bit of time in private practice, now in full-time private practice, but yeah, dabbled a bit in private practice over the years as well. So I guess I've had a reasonably broad experience of working in the criminal justice system and at different stages in the criminal justice system. Sometimes doing assessments and reports for people who are still going through their court matters, but predominantly with people who are, serving sentences or, who are in custody or detained in hospital for various reasons. Probably not, but I think I learned fairly quickly that the expectations you might have from popular media and that sort of thing about working in the criminal justice system aren't necessarily the reality. I certainly learned a lot and had some tough experiences, but my overwhelming experiences have been positive, and I think that's probably why I have continued working in the area for so long. Although I certainly do look back and think about some things that I wish I'd done differently, or some things that I might have wished that I'd known earlier in my career. Probably one of the key things I remember and that I wish I had known looking back was the value of multidisciplinary working and collaboration. I think coming fresh out of a psychology specific training, that wasn't sort of emphasised enough through the academic pathway, and yet that's been one of the most valuable development opportunities, and certainly the greatest source of collegiate support and camaraderie, if you will, throughout wherever I've worked, is having great colleagues around you. I can remember looking back and feeling uncomfortable with it at the time, and thinking about it now, how I would approach it differently. My frustration at being seen as a young woman, and therefore my value to the organisation being minimalised and even sometimes sexualised. So people perceiving that the only reason why the male clients I would be working with, for example, would be, out of some form of titillation, if you will, as opposed to getting therapeutic benefit out of the work that we were doing. And so I can remember that being implied and sometimes directly stated, and feeling pretty resentful of that, and not believing that to be true, not experiencing that as being true from the client work. And I think the me now would have been more confident perhaps to tell those people that that's not the case. That bringing compassion and validation and a lot of those things are important as well. So finding allies and finding support people around you, and people who believe not just in you as a person, but also in the value of the work that you're doing and what you represent, I think is hugely important. Because another thing that you encounter at different times, I think, is different views about people's capacity for change. And so because that was always a deeply held value that drove me into this work, and that still does, is the belief that people can change. That doesn't mean I naively think everybody will change, but that there's, there's capacity for that. And some people who I might now see as being fairly burnt out, or as having a different value set about what their roles are in the criminal justice system, is feeling more confident to lean into that and to express those beliefs and to not always directly challenge, but to call out those sorts of negative beliefs, I guess, about what the work of forensic psychologists in the criminal justice system is.